It's not bigoted to look at this and say, actually, these people seem to be going to the top of the list when some of our own are struggling.
Well, I think it is bigoted, because when our own are struggling, which they are, that's the government's fault. That's not the refugees' fault. That's not the asylum seekers' fault. Their anger needs to be... It's misdirected. You can't create an asylum seeker problem and then blame them for this government's failings. 13 years, we've got lack of housing, lack of doctors, lack of... our mortgages have gone up, our rents have gone up. That's the government's fault. That is not the asylum seekers' fault. Stop blaming them and creating hate. And that's what this government are trying to do. They're creating hate. They're creating a target so that everybody who's brainwashed or bigoted, they've got their chance now, their green light to go and pick on them. They're the reason for our problems. They're not the reason for our problems. The reason for our problems is this government's lack of help, lack of housing, lack of schools, lack of doctors, everything. The government's fault. It is the government's fault. It's not the fault of the asylum seeker. How can you blame them?
Patrick, do you think Narinder might think you were bigoted or brainwashed in all of this?
Oh, well, I do hope not, but I certainly believe that the duty of a government, of a nation, is primarily to its own citizens, and that the citizens deserve prioritising.
But they do deserve prioritising.
Right, well,
however, both can exist, because the asylum seeker also has legal rights.
Well, look. That's
they have
true.
legal rights, and we have legal obligations.
You make some valid points about there's not an adequate housing stock for this country, but in fact there is more housing in this country than there's ever been, right?
No, there isn't.
Yes, we've got about 2 million more homes than we had at the turn of the century in the last 20 years.
The Tory government have failed to build more housing.
You can say that, but what's happened is the size of our population has roared on ahead of the extra housing capacity.
That's
now,
not
it's
correct
not a matter
either.
of blaming individual people who just want to improve their lives, right? I agree it's the responsibility of the government to set the framework, but what we have here is yesterday a cabinet minister talking a good game from the perspective of people like me about it's not right, it's not fair. But
why is it not right? Why is it not right?
We have more than 50,000 foreign nationals overwhelmingly arrived in our country illegally, who are
there are no safe routes, Patrick. Patrick, you are creating division and hate.
There are schemes for Ukraine, Hong Kong,
but not for Afghanistan,
Syria,
not for all them. No, there are no safe routes. And if there's no safe routes, please don't cause division. Please don't cause racism. I get told to F off back to my own country daily.
If you would let me get a word in edgeways,
division.
if you let me get a word in edgeways, what's causing division and what's undermining our race relations are when ordinary, fair-minded members of the British public look and see we have 6,000 homeless veterans, people who risk their lives doing good work across the world, right, and for our country.
And whose fault is that?
Well, look, the housing stock is not big enough to keep bringing in loads more people.
So you're going to blame vulnerable asylum seekers. You're blaming them as opposed to blaming the government.
I'm literally not blaming.
That's not fair.
But the issue is here, and it's all about the language. Some are asylum seekers, some are migrants, some are illegal migrants.
Some?
Right.
Right, so we can't...
But we do know there are a lot of illegal migrants who are coming over in small boats. Now, you're right, there is an issue about safe routes, and that needs to be looked at. But in the meantime, these people are illegal, so they and then know they're coming here illegally.
No, but Steve, let's process the claims quicker. Let's process quicker. You can't victimise.
But you can blame people for saying, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be paying smuggling gangs, you shouldn't be doing that.
But if government can deal with that, we can process these claims quicker.
Narinder,
the government choose not to, Patrick, because they want to create a target to divert away from their failings. How can we divert away from failings? Let's tune into those bigots and blame the asylum seekers.
What we have at the moment is people who've come mainly from a safe country, France, but under an outdated asylum system, but nonetheless that says if you're fleeing in fear of your life, other countries must take you in, right? And these people who allegedly running in fear of their life are complaining about being moved from a 4-star hotel to the sort of accommodation barge refurbished and refitted.
It's a floating prison. It's a floating prison.
Actually, I think it should be secure detention,
Patrick,
but shall we do
this? Shall we put them in tents? Shall we put them in tents? Will that make you happy? Will that make people happy? Because this is performative cruelty.
I don't want to see anyone in tents.
the first person who went onto that barge said, "Oh, it's really nice."
And the second person said, "Actually, I feel like it's a prison. I'm scared of being on here." So actually, 15 people have got on it from 50,000 people. I mean, let's do the math. Yes, let's do the math here. Stop blaming vulnerable people. And yes, there may be some.
What about this? We had people emailing in the other day, say, because this is what we're talking about is the rights of British people against people from other countries.
Why are we pitting them against each other? Let's not pit. Let's look after both.
We had someone email in the other day who said, "My daughter is homeless. She's living with me in a one-bedroom flat with her child. She would love to be on the Bibby Stockholm."
And I feel for her too. I think that both things can exist. Both things can coexist. And as a government, they can deal with both. They should be dealing with both.
Yes.
How do we solve this problem that Narinder has correctly identified, that people are being pitted against each other? And how do we create a situation whereby we aren't putting Brits at the back of the queue, but equally we are treating people with dignity?
Right, well, what we've got to do is manage our population so it doesn't exceed the capacity of the state to provide public services and accommodation.
The number of children people can have?
I think we need massively to reduce and have a quota for the number of asylum applications we will accept in this country. And I agree with the idea that no one who arrives illegally should be allowed to stay.
Patrick, but then
I personally think the accommodation
processing.
barge at Dorset should be secure detention. I don't agree with buses into town bringing 500 young men into a seaside resort.
You're creating division. Right? You're actually you're talking such colourful language that's incorrect. You're saying keep them inside a floating prison. They're not allowed outside. That's cruel. That's actually being cruel.
People are detained until the merit of their application for asylum.
That can take 3 years. So you want them stuck on a floating prison for up to 3 years?
I'd like it all done much
You're making no
quicker
sense,
with
Patrick.
deportation.
So up to 3 years they can be stuck on this barge. And you know this argument where people say, well, it was good enough for the oil rig workers. They're on it for about 8 weeks. Processing is taking 1 to 3 years.
Processing needs to happen a lot faster.
Correct.
Everyone would agree with that. But it's not about pitting people against each other when, if you have 500 people bust into an area, the local population are unhappy with that. And you can understand why 500 young men are suddenly...
Who said it's just young men? And also...
Every single person going on that barge will be a young man.
But actually, that barge, 500 people, the capacity is 222 people. And it's a fire risk. The fire brigade have said this is a disaster waiting to happen.
No,
do you want that?
Clear. Those issues have been sorted out,
but still,
which is why
do you really want people, 500, even if it's 500 men, as we keep
about
saying...
Last week's
OK, but
data
even if it's 500 people, 500 men, do you really want them to be stuck on a barge 24/7 for 3 years? Is that correct?
No, I would like them to be back in their own countries.
And
ask
the government to do that by processing it quicker and actually creating safe routes. Because if they did that, problem solved. It's actually quite simple, instead of creating hate. Because I think it's horrible.
Would you then be in support of getting them to Rwanda to be processed? Because, I mean...
No, because it's costing too much money. This is costing too much money for the British taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer.
Part of this issue with the barge and trying to use it is trying to get people out of hotels, which is costing a huge amount of money.
So what should we do? Put them in tents? How should we do it? Put them in tents?
You say to put them in tents with that sort of derogatory tone, but there are thousands of British people every night, not even with a tent
and
on
whose
the street,
fault is that?
Because our housing capacity is under such strain. We're a crowded country.
Patrick,
getting houses built is very difficult.
Housing is under such capacity because the government didn't build enough. This is the failings of the Tory government. It's appalling what they've done.
Labour
I know what they've done is create hate. And I feel sad about that because as a woman of colour in this country, I get told to F off back to my country daily. And Lee Anderson has just given a green light to all of that. And actually, vulnerable people coming in, yes, there probably is some people who are illegal and they're doing it just to play the God. Some. But let's not pick on the people who are actually genuine. Because I think we're better than that as a country.
Well,
the British people, I truly believe,
it's the scale of this influx that's undermining what were very good race relations in this country.
But we're not going to be able to change the scale of the influx, are we? I mean, it's a global problem.
Well, no,
most European countries
I think we could.
higher numbers than we are in the United States.
But I think you've had discussions on your programme already about essential steps, as in withdrawing from the European
But
Convention
Patrick,
and the UN Refugee Convention 1951, ages and ages ago, different world.
Patrick,
we
we've
need
had
a
1 million
governing
legal.
party that's prepared to do that.
Patrick,
and I
we've
don't think
had
the
1
Tories
million
are.
legal migrants. 1 million
Absolutely,
legal.
in a single year.
So what's happened to your capacity of schools, hospitals?
Exactly.
Why do we pick on the asylum seekers and not the legal million?
Look, two
That's
wrongs
a million.
don't make a right. That legal immigration volumes is an even bigger problem and pressure on public
Except
services.
that we have shortages of people doing jobs, and we need migrants to come in and do that. And
Exactly.
this is what the Chancellor of the Exchequer said.
Why not let
regularly.
them
We
work?
need people to come in and work.
Let them work.
I'm not
They're
talking about the
desperate
illegal
to
That will
work.
just draw
Okay.
millions more people in. If you allow asylum seekers to work and earn money, it's a massive extra pull factor. We cannot.
And our economy
responsibly
needs
take
that,
step.
Patrick.
It doesn't.
Our economy needs
inactive Brits.
Our economy
to
has
get into the
always
labour
survived
market.
on actually migrants. Our economy has
That's a
thrived
huge
on immigration
exaggeration.
for years, hundreds of years.
On that basis, you just open the border, wouldn't you?
No, but look, no one's saying we just open the borders.
Yes,
Nobody's
they are.
actually saying
A
that.
lot
But we
of the
certainly need the
charities
workers
are
because
saying
British
that.
people do not want to clean the toilets. They don't want to pick the food.
Yeah.
They won't do it.
Just look
This
at the
country-
banners, no borders, everyone welcome.
No, we don't do that, Patrick. Again, you're exaggerating, and again, you're creating some kind of division.
The left
because
in this
no one's saying
country
open
these
borders.
days doesn't believe in borders. It believes
That's incorrect. We do believe in borders.
That's
We
the
have to have
concept.
borders. That just makes sense. That's common sense. We need borders, but we don't need people creating
You don't want
division
borders
and
being
hate.
enforced. is
Right,
what you
well,
mean.
we've got to leave it there.